Good evening. We are back in open session, the Milton Planning Board's fifth meeting of fiscal year 2019. And on our agenda, we have continuation of the public hearing for the site plan approval of the Milton Marketplace second story addition. It was continued from August 23rd. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I think when we were last here, Madam Chairperson, you had requested some certain things, some building elevations, building section, mechanical drawings, roof plan, location of kitchen exhaust, and how odor is regulated, equipment cut sheets, and we did supply what we could put together. In addition to that, sometime today, I got some cut sheets on the acoustics that I sent into Mr. Clark, but I have a copy for everybody if I could
Great,
pass it
yes,
around.
please do.
And we also had some descriptions of the windows and doors for the project.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just windows. If I could pass those around too.
Thank you.
Okay.
We shot one?
All right, does everybody have, we also received in our packets additional information. The plans that we received in our packets were fairly small, so I did ask Bill to send me the full size, and I plotted those myself here. So if we have questions about some of the notes, which were hard to read on the 8.5 by 11.
I did deliver a full set.
Okay, so you've got them? All right, I didn't get them. That's fine.
They were on your door, because I put them on the door.
The squirrels got them or something. All right. Thank you for clarifying that you did deliver them, Bill. All right, so did you want to have an opportunity to go through what you submitted to us, and then we can ask questions of you, and then we'll take public comment? Or do you want to just us to go ahead through it?
I think if you could go through it.
Okay.
Some of the things, I don't really have the technical expertise to explain the acoustics measurements to you.
Okay, so, thank you. One of the things I think that we heard from some neighbors was to noise control and odor control. So,
Yes.
and that's why we asked about the equipment, where it would be located, and how, if it's in a well, how tall is the well, and if there's any acoustic treatment on the equipment itself. So thank you for providing that. It does give us more information here. I think I saw that there's, some of this equipment is being relocated and some is new, is that right?
It's all gonna be new equipment.
It's all gonna be new
Yes,
equipment?
and it is being relocated more toward front center of the building, which is further away from any residential area. The hood exhaust is being relocated more toward the front of the building again, but also toward the back parking lot, where they load the trucks and what have you. So it gets it further away from where it is now against that residential lot line.
So would there be in the existing, so some of that equipment is over here now where it says proposed roof? Because
Correct,
that's where it's
correct.
the
Where it
single
says
story?
proposed roof is right along that edge there, some of the equipment.
Tony, which sheet are you on?
We're on A1.2. So the equipment is currently here, generally speaking.
Correct, toward the back wall.
Right here?
No,
Here.
correct,
Okay, and it's being moved here and
Correct.
here. But it will be new equipment here.
correct,
Okay, and this is the exhaust for the kitchen?
correct.
And this is makeup air or air
That's
conditioning? heating?
HVAC
Yeah.
system.
Okay. And looking at the drawings, those are, there's a well there that's, so Bill, can you go to 2.2? 2.2?
Correct. Yeah, A22.
Yeah, so can you zoom in on this, Bill? I'm sorry. So this would be the residential side,
Correct,
and this would be the parking lot side?
correct.
And so this is 29 feet to that first exhaust, right? And this is 5 feet, so it's sitting down
Correct.
5 feet from the top of that parapet?
They've got it's actually a little plus or minus. It could be a little bit higher, you know, depending on,
Here?
but the goal of that parapet is to screen the units. And the units that we spec, that we have some detailed specs on sizes and what have you, but that could change a little bit. So whatever the unit is gonna determine the height of that parapet. And the parapet, we have about a 10-inch line that we can play with high or low toward the highest point of the low roof in the back. So it's not gonna be any higher than, there's a peak in the back of the building, any higher than that peak, it'll tie in nicely with that. It's gonna be still well lower than the overall height of the building, the peak of the building.
So you're saying that this height is still undetermined?
No,
That piece may be undetermined, but you see the dotted line? The dotted line goes up to the peak. Everything is being behind the peak itself.
correct.
Right, but part of the potential for acoustic improvement is the fact that there's this wall there.
Yes.
So if this is not going to be 5 feet, we should just want to have an idea what the range of it would be if it's not
It
5
would be
feet.
5 to 6.
5 to 6, okay,
Yeah.
not 4 to 5,
No,
okay.
no, no,
Okay.
5 to 6.
All right, so,
I drew the minimum at 5, again, based on how the equipment gets mounted, because if you see that piece of HVAC equipment, they call for a leg, but they didn't give me a specific height on that, and there's a little range on that to sit it up off the roof. So I'm gonna keep it as low as possible to the roof, and that's why I started with the 5 foot.
so one thing that you haven't called out here is what material's going to be on the back side here. And if,
Acoustic material.
right, so if there could be acoustic material on the back side of that, that a barrier wall
Well,
can be
the whole-
advantageous to acoustic
The
control?
whole rubber roof and parapet will have a rigid board insulation on it, which has an acoustic value to it.
30 feet away is not, putting acoustic material 30 feet away isn't going to help you.
So, I mean, the other, no, I mean, it really should be closer, and it can be an add-on to the equipment. And that's what was unclear to me when, in the equipment
it
cut
is-
sheets that you
It is-
submitted.
it-
Yeah,
Well, this is, again, we sent a couple of different, and there could be up to 120 pages you have to go through on that equipment to see all that. And so I had the HVAC contractor detail that one sheet out at least to give us something as to what sound we'll have out of this equipment. But as far as the jackets it has and the acoustical value it has, we did submit the overall website and plan for the equipment that we planned on using.
so when you said the mechanical engineer, is that the sheet that you're talking about?
No, that's for the hood.
So
The HVAC
I'm sorry, you're
is for
talking, the HVAC?
correct.
Okay.
The exhaust fans on those are pointing
Wait,
up on the
so
side.
I'm looking at this again. So this is the neighbor, right? Residential neighbor. This is the kitchen. And the rooftop is closest, according to the roof plan. The rooftop equipment is closer to the parking lot, right? So,
If you're looking at the plan, both, the
yeah, so,
HVAC is closest to the parking lot.
right.
And they're
Okay.
both closest to the loading area in the back.
So the way I understand the plan in the roof plan again, Bill, is it blowing, is it being blown and directed this way?
The side vents are tough.
Residential.
That's the HVAC unit. Are you talking about the hood unit?
Well,
or the-
this is,
Both
right,
of them.
on this drawing, it says kitchen exhaust and odor
Oh,
control.
okay, all right, yes.
And then, so I'm.
Everything is
that's-
blowing out the back toward the loading zone. That's how it's gonna be mounted, toward the loading zone, in the back. The parking area in the back and the loading
That
zone.
way,
That's how it's all gonna be exhausted.
but then there are people.
So do you know what the sort of triangular piece is? Because on this cut sheet, you can't read the words, are too small or blurry.
I'm gonna pull up on that. All
right, so maybe what we could do is just have you clarify for us, on that equipment, where the exhaust is going, where the fans are actually blowing it out, just so we're clear about
All
it.
exhausts are blowing toward the loading dock, which is all exhaust will be blowing, the way the equipment will be mounted, all exhaust will be blowing toward the loading dock, which is the
Right.
furthest point away from any residential home
Okay,
in the back.
I appreciate that, but I'm not sure that's what the equipment shows. So if you don't mind just marking it on the, again, and maybe it's just that we get this a little bit larger format so we can make
Sure.
sure we see where the fans are.
Yep.
Because that's what's important, I think, in helping on the odor too, is just, where it's pointing. And I recognize that if that's mechanical equipment, where your exhaust is and where your intake is have to not be right on top of one another, so that you would be bringing it right back in. So,
But this is a pretty advanced charcoal filtered system.
okay,
So and it has all that in the
that's what's just,
specs there.
it's a little hard to,
I
I
know.
tried to follow it, and I went to
It
Captivate
is in this-
website
yeah,
to try and
it's
find
a-
it, to be honest with you. So, all right, well, we can come back to, whether people feel like we need more information on that. But I appreciate that you're taking the concern about the noise and about the odor. So we talked about the odor. Can you point out the noise? There's a module that you can buy for this, I understand, to address the noise as well. Is that what you?
Correct. At this point, what we all their equipment is old up there. Everything's gonna be new, okay? We're not saving anything. So everything's gonna be new. Everything is gonna be the state-of-the-art noise and smell at this point. In the time we had, I tried to provide what I could get from the suppliers, not my mechanical engineer, the guys that are actually going to be doing it and installing these units. And this is what they had sent me. So for me to actually speak as a mechanical engineer on all these parts, I'm not qualified.
Right.
And I'd be the first to say that. If you want a mechanical engineer's stamped drawing stating all that, I didn't go that route yet because they weren't sure if they were even gonna be able to do this project. Otherwise, I would have had a lot more advanced plans and all that stated out for you
Right.
guys. But I didn't, I was
And-
kinda caught between a few things, and the guys that are actually doing the job, I asked them to provide me with whatever information they could, as close that we could understand as well.
So I can appreciate that. And I'm not a mechanical engineer either. I do work with them, so I feel like I can ask some of the questions that need to be asked. But maybe what we need as an answer is just to say, like they circle a model number, if they could just say, this particular thing is to address the noise, this particular thing is to address the odors. And then, what you described as the kind of filtration system on it, because it's,
I think that's on some of that stuff that you have, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
saw more on the website than I saw in what we received, honestly. So,
And then this
again, we can
latest
come
one.
back
Yeah.
to that after we hear from other folks. And I just did want to point out, we had asked, and I think Brian had asked particularly, if you would locate where you were going to put lighting on the face of the building. So when we reviewed at our last meeting, the site plan, and Brian had identified a kind of dark, he said dark spot, and you had said that there was going to be lights on the building. It would be, we don't have that information here in what was submitted. And because people asked about that, members of the public, we do, I think we will want to see that, so just want to.
Are you referring, excuse me, are you referring to the light on the back of the building that one of the neighbors was concerned about?
So our electrician actually has been working on that a little bit. We didn't want to give you a final plan until we had that fixture addressed.
Okay.
So he's
Darryl?
gonna.
Yes, Brian? Sorry.
I was really looking to understand the lighting anywhere on the building. So in particular, there was an area out in front of the building, probably on the west side of the building, just beyond the main entrance. If you're facing the main entrance to the left, there was an area that got down to 0 in between some of the parking spaces. I think we had assumed or been told that there was some wall packs on that side of the building, and we were hoping to see those wall packs and what the photometric impact would be.
Looking at it from your office, look to the left of the main entrance.
So there are some existing lights there as well on the building that are not currently part of the plan that we submitted last time around, which will be part of the one we submit next time around.
Okay. Board members, questions?
So I just wanted to recognize that a lot of the neighbors came in over the course of this, and they've been supportive, and they've said that you're a good neighbor, and that means a lot to me on a board like this, to hear that you're a good neighbor, so I know you're working hard. Because this is a residential area, and you're building a business and you're coming to us for waivers, we want to have a chance to address all of the community's concern. So I'm really glad that Cheryl has taken a lot of this in, but we really want to, I have a checklist from last time, the noise from the roof equipment, the exhaust fumes and cooking odors. And I picked up on something that Rich said last time, which is that so many businesses have come into East Milton and said, we're going to do state-of-the-art, and the neighbors keep saying, we still smell some food odors and the this odors and the that odors. So state-of-the-art is great. We want state-of-the-art. We really want to be sure that we're going to address this with every new business that comes in. We don't want to add any new smells. So I'm glad you're using state-of-the-art, and I don't know other language we can get to ensure that it's going to work.
Well, that's where, Denny, I think that if they do have their mechanical engineer provide a narrative to the design and how it's addressing those concerns that can accompany the equipment cut sheets and the other data, that would help us.
Yeah.
Give us a little more of a layman's kind of description of it all. Yes?
Yeah, just to add on to that, I mean, it would be nice to, again, layman's, because I don't think, regardless, like, so I won't know what their benchmark for, state-of-the-art is. And so it would be nice if we knew, because we must know what's at the other restaurants in the area, right? We must know what's at Novara, at Mr. Chan's, and some of the other restaurants. So if we could figure out, is this truly different than what it just went in, a brand-new restaurant, and it is even more state-of-the-art, it would give me some sense to know that this truly will be different, right? Because we were kind of here a couple of years ago, and they said state-of-the-art, and I can tell you a few blocks away, you can smell breakfast being made.
So is there a business that you can tell is doing it right, that we could?
I don't know.
No, you feel
I
like?
don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe they are at the restaurants there, and I just don't smell it. So maybe it's great, but it would be nice to be able to have somebody, and maybe that's
Yeah,
planning
Bill,
group or
do we-
somebody.
Do we have a benchmark? No.
There are,
Or at least maybe the mechanical engineer to say, this is what's here, it's not working so well, and
or-
why is this
Or
better?
to say, XYZ restaurants have employed this particular technology.
There you
And, at least then we have some kind of idea
Right,
that way. On the acoustics, there's definitely more benchmarks. There's about what's acceptable, external noise,
Right.
especially near residential. And I know, like, for example, I think it's either the EPA or HUD has some kind of established, we looked at that when we were doing 131 Elliott, when we were writing the special permit. I don't remember what those are off the top of my head.
It's DEP and
DEP, okay. So it wasn't one. So maybe you could ask your engineer about that as well.
Yes.
April?
No, I mean, and this means nothing to me. I don't have any expertise in this area to know what this means, so a narrative would be very helpful. It seems like there's a lot of people in the audience, so I'm very interested to hear what
Right.
folks have to say.
Okay. So do you mind giving a little room at the table here
No,
for
we don't
folks from
mind
the
at all.
audience to come forward? Thank you. And we'll have you come back up afterwards.
Thank you.
Ms. Lauren?
Did receive, Julia received a phone call from an abutter who had then submitted an email. It was sent to all of you.
Yes, I have it.
Yeah, I did receive that letter.
I have it here.
Elaine Hahn,
Yes.
got it.
Okay, we can come back to that, okay? Is there anyone here who would like to come address the board or have questions for the applicant on this? Yes, please come forward. Please state your name and address.
Hi.
Hi.
Suzanne Lombardi. I'm at 26 Pierce Street in Milton. I'm also the owner of the Plate and a lifelong resident of East Milton. So I just want to go on the record as saying the McNoses are my landlord, and they're great landlords. And we're very happy operating the Plate on the second floor. I have no issues with their expansion plans and, have faith that they're going to continue to do quality work, because I was part of that work. I just wanted to bring attention to the planning board that as these drawings are right now, outside of our beautiful windows, the plan is to build a brick wall that's about 8 inches on the outside of those windows, which would take away our garden space. This would drastically change the experience that our guests and neighbors have in the restaurant. And I'm speaking tonight because I believe in the importance of green space and the impact it has on our lives, as small as our green space is up there. And the Plate has become more than just a restaurant that serves good seasonal food. It really has become a community meeting place in the town. And I know that people love our beautiful space up there, but I also think that this green space has a lot to do with the experience they love. And, lastly, as a resident, I just would like to see, as East Milton continues to evolve, that we try to preserve any green space that we have and create more green space and not take that away. So hopefully, I hope that the Magnoses take that into consideration as they move forward. But it's so hidden within these drawings that I felt the need to bring people's attention to.
I did notice that you were losing that space, and I was wondering if we'd hear from you about that. Do you know how wide that space is now?
I'm gonna guess, Tony probably knows where that space is.
At about 12 feet. The length of it is about 16 feet. It's just under 12 off the building. It might be closer to 11 now, I think, if I was with that fence there.
So about 11 feet wide by the width of that portion of the building. Okay. So,
So the windows all brick.
so where that new retail space of 1,330 square feet, and it's called out to be 31 feet 5 inches wide, it's about a third of that in width that you're talking about.
Right.
And that is east facing the open end? I'm just trying to think if it were something that became open space again, but it had a building on the other side of it, would are you concerned about the daylight amount of it or more the green space amount of it?
Both, really. I mean, it's hard to separate one from the other.
And I don't recall, are there skylights in that space? Is
There are skylights. We, you know, put into the build-out those big, beautiful, expensive windows. And, you know, really, in the plan was to bring in more light to that space in general, that had been there before.
And. Okay. Would you like to add anything else?
No, again, you know, you know, it's great to bring more foot traffic up there and to offer, you know, something new and good to the neighborhood. And, you know, I support the expansion, and I stand behind the quality of work that the Magnosis do. It's just, you know, I just, again, wanted to, it's sort of hidden within these if you're not somebody who reads blueprints, certainly not the board, but neighbors and residents.
So you would be supportive of the expansion overall, in particular, if you could retain an open green space, right, in that same location?
Correct.
Okay.
And I think, you know, our neighbors would too.
Do you grow anything in that you use in the kitchen?
Not that we use in the kitchen, we'd like to. It's hard to have access
it.
out there to do daily maintenance. And there are other parts in the building that we could more easily do that and would love to do that. So, yeah. But there are sort of hardy things that grow out there right now, and we do on a seasonal basis change out annual plants and such.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who would like to come speak to us? Okay, if not, please come back to the table. We have time.
I do too.
Yeah, we have more time. So Denny has some questions, and then Rich.
This is more on our list from our discussion last time. Audrey Devon, I think, came in last time, and she talked about the delivery trucks. And the woman who wrote the letter, you know, asked, will there be more delivery trucks now that we have 3 new stores? And she mentioned that there are some, I think she said 18-wheelers that come at 6 a.m. in the top front parking lot. I didn't know if you had given any thought about staggering, or Brian had a great idea of no idle signage, because when the trucks are idling, it's just exhaust and noise. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
So there's no idles, no refrigeration allowed, no idling allowed in the rear parking lot. We do not have any signage in the front parking lot. I don't know if the drivers will see, we have one loading zone area for deliveries in the front of the store, although there are some deliveries that come before 8 o'clock in the morning that will deliver through the front of the building, because they're not allowed to go out back. It's very difficult to get vendors to deliver at specific times. It's almost impossible, really.
Okay.
We're lucky to get them to come at all sometimes, much less at certain times. And of course, they all like to be there early and out of there early, so it's very difficult to get anyone to come later in the day, which would be great, because you can get in and out of there very quickly at noontime or 1 o'clock, as opposed to a line of trucks at 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's a constant battle and challenge in regards to deliveries. As far as the businesses that may go into the second floor, again, I don't anticipate a lot more deliveries. You know, the shops that are upstairs now rely mainly on UPS, and they're there pretty much daily in our loading zone, delivering to those stores. I can't speak to who would be up there, so I can't say, you know, what kind of deliveries or additional deliveries there would be. I can't imagine many. Certainly, the bulk of the deliveries, you know, 98% of what comes to the building goes to the fruit center. So, and so that is, the bulk of it is us. So I don't know how to tweak or change that.
In the UPS deliveries, as I understand it, for the stores up on the second floor, are mostly small trucks and vans.
Yeah, and they're usually there, you know, later in the day. They're not there first thing in the morning or anything like that.
And how about employees? If you have a few new stores, you're gonna have a few more employees. Have you thought about employee parking, differentiation?
So, right now, we require our employees to park in the rear of the building, and that would remain the case.
And you'd have enough there?
And there are days, every once in a while, where they'll, you know, work their way up the side of the building, just because, you know, on certainly those busier days, or holidays, or weekends, or whatever, where we don't have outlets. We do have other places where our employees can park. Thomas Funeral Home, they're a great, great neighbor, and anytime they don't have a funeral or a wake, they allow us to park our vehicles in their lots. So we try to move them around if we can, whenever we can, but some days are more challenging than others. And again, these stores would be small. You know, one of the reasons why, you know, it was easy to rent to Tom Fisk down the end of the hall is because he's the only employee in his store, and we loved that idea. It was one car. It wasn't 3, 4, 5, 6 different employees. And so we look for that anyways, because it helps everyone to minimize the amount of cars that are in the parking lot.
But I do think that when we reviewed the site plan, we did discuss the fact that they have more parking spaces than are required by zoning.
Okay, so that's good. And then Elaine Hahn, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, had questions about the construction timeframe, what time of day will construction be taking place, which days of the week, and so on. I didn't know if you could share that with us, or if you had a plan.
I don't know that we can even speak to that
Okay.
yet. Just, it's so
Sure,
early in the
okay.
process, and it would be very difficult to speak to that. I
So
think.
that would fall, Bill, that would fall under just the town guidelines, or we would put that in the permit, so the general rules are.
Can't start before 7, and I'm not sure what the other end of that is.
Yeah,
But I know we just passed that bylaw 2 years ago.
yeah. And what
We do
about
with the 7 o'clock
weekends?
start. Tony doesn't get up before then anyway, so he's good.
Okay.
And obviously, any guidelines you
That's
guys
coffee break.
wanted to put in place, obviously would follow any guidelines that you would recommend or have, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, given the proximity to the residential there, I think some kind of construction management plan. I mean, it doesn't have to be an extensive document, but, you know, how you're planning to, you know, where contractors will park, you know, what your hours are, because there will be noise generated, right? Maybe if there's any kind of dust control or things like that. Just kind of outline that, and we could review.
No nights, no Sundays,
Yeah.
No holidays.
which,
Good.
again, they don't do that now.
So the last thing on the list was the open space window. I was wondering if you had any ideas on what Susan Lombardi just mentioned. I guess these windows are beautiful right now. Have you thought about?
About leaving the open space.
Yeah, I know that we certainly respect what Suzanne had to say, and we understand what her concerns are. It was the first I heard of it tonight. I know Michael was approached about it within the last day or so. I think we have to look at it to see if there's any type of relief that we could do on that. I do know that we'll try to accommodate her in any way, but we just can't promise anything without looking over the plans again. I would also point out that we're trying to create some outdoor space for the plate. We have a petition, an application before the Architectural Review Board now, and a variance was granted to give outdoor seating. And right now, it's on hold because the building inspector, Mr. Prondak, had objected to it, and they've suspended it for the time being, and they want us to come back. And we plan to address that with them about possibly putting in a ramp to help handicapped people, to make it more accessible. And we're exploring that now, so we hope to create some outdoor space for the plate and hopefully some green space as a result of that. But we'll certainly take a look at the plan to see if we can do anything about that wall that she's talking about.
Yeah. April?
So where is this
Sure.
outdoor seating
Can I-
proposed?
No, after.
Front of the building?
Yes,
Across the hall?
yes.
Rich?
Yeah, no, I just, echo some things that Denny said a minute ago. I live in the neighborhood, and I absolutely patronize the shops and fruit center probably more times in a week than I should. It's a great for the neighborhood, and I think if you watched a couple planning board meetings ago, we saw an aerial of the neighborhood, and I absolutely mentioned that the area there blends in with the neighborhood, and it's not obtrusive, and so we know that things are thoughtful when planned, and I do appreciate the comments earlier about that space. So I would have asked the same question that Denny did, so I thought that was a great answer, and look forward to maybe hearing possible plans of how to accommodate.
Anything, Brian, else besides the lighting?
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay, so I think what we would like to do is continue the hearing and have you come back with some additional information for us.
That makes sense.
Okay, so we have the mechanical narrative, the building mounted lighting, the consideration of a revision to the plan to keep the green space associated with the plate. I think a draft construction management plan, again, I've seen them be very complex. This doesn't have to be complex, just, a time frame, how long you expect it to take to build it, what your construction hours are expected to be, something where your construction staff, or is that going to cause any burden in terms of the rest of the parking? Rebuilding your parking lot sent things into a little flurry around there for a while, right?
Yes, and we appreciate the board's assistance in that.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, Rich, go ahead.
Just because it was brought up about the outdoor seating, and I would imagine if folks are listening, they might have heard that and have started asking questions, or might get phone calls. So I have heard a little bit about it and heard that you've gotten a variance and that was, held up with Joe. I don't know, is this something that'll reach us at some point? Or, or at least, at the very least, could we know where that is planned for? Or what the thought process around it was?
So it's right, if you walk into the fruit center, the carriage corral.
Yeah.
Right above that is
Okay.
where the outdoor space would be.
Okay.
So if you go up the stairs and around,
Yeah.
it'd be on your left-hand side out those windows there where we,
On the existing deck.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
the plan was to have maybe 14 seats out there.
Okay, so in the front?
You know where the building signs are?
Yeah.
It's up there,
Yep,
right there.
okay, I get it. So does that come to the planning board when it gets, when there's like an approval by, is it like a state, and then we stop it at the?
No, because it wouldn't come to us unless it was an expansion of the building area, and that's an exterior area. But it is an interesting question, because, it does, if it went on the residential side, you'd think somebody should review it from that point of view. But
Right.
But in this case where it's going on the other side, so it's something to consider, in the business districts as we look at zoning in the business districts. But
And we've been up there a number of times now, and the board's pretty good. And I feel fairly confident that we'll be able to come up with a plan that would be acceptable to the building commissioner and to the architectural review board.
the Architectural Access Board is state.
Right.
So, if you have a place of public accommodation, the requirement is that it be accessible. And they do grant variances, so I'm
I
assuming
thought
that
that's where they were, and I don't.
I'm
to know.
assuming that's the process that you're describing,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Were there particulars given to you by the zoning board of appeals? Hours, days?
on the second floor? I mean, the existing hours that we have in the building right now, that was a condition.
Okay, was there anything else that we wanted to see back from them? Okay, so what date, Lauren and Bill, did we say we were going to continue this to?
We did not say a date yet.
We did not set a date yet, okay. So our schedule would be to have a meeting on the 11th of October. There's conflict for two of our members, so we're talking about postponing that meeting or rescheduling that meeting potentially to the following week. So do we need to make that decision now so that we can give them a date firm for the continuation? Yes. Okay, so how do people's schedules look?
I can do 18th.
Okay,
That's that crazy week though, right?
no, it's the week before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 18th, I can do the 18th.
Okay, Brian, can you do the 18th?
No, I'll be in Chicago, sorry. I can do Monday that week, that's it.
Just,
Yeah, I'm in DC the Monday.
hmm,
I'm in DC on Monday.
you can't do, how about,
Wait a minute, hold it
oh,
up.
sorry,
You might need some more time.
more than the 18th? Okay,
What you are requesting.
okay, all right.
Oh, wait a
Because
minute, we have something
before
else.
then, all right, so what we were talking about is the 25th is our, again, the next meeting, but we were also, the 8th. All right, so, but we're not going to reschedule. Okay,
I'd be open to adding the first if people are available, but that week of the 15th is tough for me. I'm traveling.
all right, because, so if you don't mind just hanging on a little bit before I talk about our schedule. We have some special permit applications starting, and we're mindful that one is Wolcott Woods and will take multiple meetings, and one is Thomas Nursery. So if we don't meet on the 11th, and the next meetings we have are related to town meeting, should we meet on the 1st and the 8th, but then the next meeting would normally be the 22nd, that's Thanksgiving in November. So what I'm trying to do is figure out if we can get 2 meetings in October and 2 meetings in November, board members.
So the 15th and the 18th aren't good. Do we want to look at October 16th, 17th?
Brian, are you traveling that whole week, the week of the 15th?
Which week?
The week of the 15th?
Yeah.
Okay, all right then.
I could potentially do the 16th.
You can't.
I know.
Yeah, I
we-
see.
Yeah, and I can't do the 15th either. All
So
right,
this is a
they need more-
discussion because Brian can't be there on the 11th and I'm,
And you're not there on the 11th.
I can't either on the 11th.
And you're not the 11th.
oh,
We
okay, I was
definitely
gonna
can't
say,
do the
maybe I
11th.
can rearrange, but if you can't be there, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All right, so.
I was
because-
holding my tongue just in case I'd have to tell you I couldn't be there.
So one thought I had was whether we change our meetings from, in November, from the 8th and the 22nd to the 1st and the 15th, and then the 29th,
Could we do
and that
could
would,
we do the 1st, 8th, and the 29th?
I guess so. Let's see.
First? October 1st. I was gonna say.
It's 3 weeks in a row.
No, the 29th is not in a row. The 1st of November, the 8th of November, and then the 29th.
We just
Yeah, it
scheduled
would be
something
3
for the
weeks in a row. I
25th
agree for the 25th. You're right.
October.
So you get
Yeah,
25,
we're sticking with that, I think.
The 15th is the NAOP gala, so we could try to move it to a non-Thursday night, but there's a real estate event that night that
Oh,
I think at least 2 of us are going to.
Yeah,
Night?
the 15th.
Oh. Yes, Lauren?
If the 4 out of the 5 members are available on the 18th, you don't need a supermajority for this. It's a site plan approval.
They won't be ready, though.
Oh, that's correct.
no,
Okay.
no, that was Thomas.
We could still have the meeting on the 18th, you're saying, but this item wouldn't be on the agenda on the 18th. But do we want to start, a special permit is one of those that requires 4/5. So it's not ideal to start one member's not here.
Right. So what about?
So what does that put us back to?
November 1st. So we do the 25th.
No, I'm good on all those
Okay.
days.
November 1st, 8th.
I think we stick with what you, even though it's going to mean meeting
3 times in a
3
row.
weeks in a
Maybe what you
row.
do is, take the 25th, take the 1st, the 15th, and you move your December meeting up.
The 15th doesn't work.
Yeah.
What did we say, the 15th?
15th doesn't work, so I was saying, we said the 1st, the 8th, and the 29th. And that works for you, Brian?
Yeah.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Well, I'd like to suggest then that we do,
Bless you.
bless you. So we cancel the 11th. We schedule the 25th. And then November 1st, 8th, and 29th. And then
We're
that
not
gives
meeting
you
on the 25th?
Sorry?
No, we are.
October 25th.
Yeah, okay.
October 25th, yeah. So that gives you some November option, and since I think you'll take less time than, and the other special permit applications, you have your choice right now, which
Let's make
of
sure
those
it's
dates you would like to come back.
Thursday, 29th.
The 8th, I think, would be okay.
The 8th of November?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a Thursday. Yeah.
That's fine.
Thank you for your patience.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
All right, so we're not meeting on the 11th, but we are meeting on the 25th
Correct.
at 6.
At 6.
At 6.
Yeah, did I turn it off again?
All right. Let's go and do our other administrative items since we did the meetings. And we have one set of minutes, have,
You're giving them 7:15.
7:15, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, I was wondering why there were so many people here.
Yeah, but, I don't know. Maybe a few things to hear for.
Okay, are folks here for East Milton discussion? Are folks here
We're trying to
for,
let you go home early.
all right, so Milton Village
Trying.
discussion? Adams
Milton.
Court? All right, so, I had conversation with Ned earlier saying that, that they would likely arrive just in time. So we
Oh,
can.
that was-
we-
That was good time, wasn't it? It was like-
We can take Adams
planned it.
Court, since I did see some hands in the audience. So gentlemen, please come forward. We just finished Milton Marketplace. So we're going to need to look at the things that we had outlaid as a process, right? So you're aware that the MAPC was engaged to do a build-out analysis. They weren't engaged to come make a presentation. So we have the analysis we received today. So that didn't give us a lot of time to really go through it much. So it might be that we go through it together here. And then we can think about what it helps with in terms of information and what questions it raises, and what we might need to do next with that. On the traffic, Beta's been engaged also. We had been shooting for October 11th, and you missed our discussion that we just had about needing to rework our schedule a little bit because we have 3 members who can't be here on the 11th. So our next meeting is going to at the moment, not be until October 25th. So we can talk about whether that presents any issues, you know, with respect to this process. So I think with that,
Would you be considering a second meeting in November?
We have, right.
5 Thursdays in November.
yeah, so what we said is the 1st, the 8th, and the 29th would be, we would meet on those dates.
So you would make up the 11th with the 1st. So I think that,
Right.
we don't lose a meeting. I think that's
Right,
fine.
yeah, we couldn't find a meeting date that worked better than that. So I think, Bill, did you have the work product from MAPC on the development analysis? And then I think also if you have, and if you didn't have, I put on that thumb drive a comparison of the different proposals that the Falcone team had put together. It's a Word file.
I didn't do that yet.
You didn't do that yet? Well, all right, we'll start.
And I have with me, if it's helpful, a presentation that would show the iterations of the earlier plans as they moved from the so-called friendly 40B, you know, a year ago until we got to the point in early spring. We moved on, so I can.
Someone call it?
We lose Brian.
It's Brian's phone.
So I think that you came out with an initial proposal. You were working with the community, seeing if you could address some concerns expressed with the East Milton Neighborhood Association, right? And you had a proposal in April, and then there was a delay in the process, right? And then came back in the summer with the proposal that took a whole different approach, right? And so what you had said to us that you were amenable as a team to considering either the April proposal or the summer July proposal. Is that still true? Are you pretty much asking us to
No, I
look
think
at the
we're,
July proposal?
I think what we are amenable to is if we can get there, and we haven't studied it, is whether the newer proposal can be reduced to a 10%.
I was going to get to that,
alternative.
yeah.
There's a lot of reasons why the new form of the building works better. We don't need underground parking. We can do structured parking within the area's existing parking lot. The existing office building can be, those tenants can be relocated into a new building, and that can be the area that is part of the parking area.
So what we were talking
So-
about then is some kind of melding of those two approaches. Okay, so let's get to that after we go through the development analysis, and then we can talk about,
Okay, that's where I was
Melding
confused. I
of
thought
these
that's what we were
two?
doing, and I.
A melding of these two ideas?
I'm sorry, Lucas, which one?
The 27th,
Actually,
28th.
no, it's one that is not, it's not on here. We asked MAPC to add it, which they did do and resend, but it's not what's printed here, Lauren, right? Did you see Mark's new one? He added a line in here for, hold on, I've got it.
No.
Funny.
So, I'm sorry, so this, what we're looking at here, are these supposed to be similar?
You know what, these are the ones that sort of scale-wise, we said, okay, let's see what else we have in town. Let's compare
Oh, okay,
the
thank
FAR, the, height, the units, the density, the density on a per unit per acre basis. Like, to give some, like if you said,
Yep.
what's 36 Central because you go by 36 Central? Or
Yeah.
what's Milton Hill House because you can go by it? Or what's something else that's been permitted in town, like 2 Adams Street? So that was the idea, is to say, let's give this some kind of analysis compared to other things, so it helps us understand what's being.
No,
Yeah.
that puts it in better context,
Yeah.
because I was looking at these and like, they're very different areas, so.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's not as if Milton has a lot of exact same sites, you know, every site is a little different, but it's a starting point to
Sure.
understand
Yep.
the zoning tools, you know, so we think about, like, if you listen to the presentation on the Milton Village, which I'm just gonna touch on briefly later, but the MAPC presentation was an excellent presentation, so if you get a chance, you can watch it on demand from Milton Access Cable. But, and what Josh said is, you know, the lot coverage and the FAR are really kind of the density controlling devices. So that's why it's useful to understand, you know, what the other projects, how those are coming in and faring, right? So,
Great.
so that's what we were, my thought when suggesting this was just to help put what's been presented to us in context of other things in town. So Bill, you got an email from Mark this afternoon where he did add the April proposal. So there should be 3 blue ones for Adams Court rather than 2 here, guys. So since we just got this, you know, we're gonna have to continue to look at it and evaluate it. But let's go to, actually, I would go to 36 Central first before 2 Adams, because 2 Adams hasn't been built. So if you look at, really hard to see up there, isn't it? So 36 Central is on 0.56 acres. So it's a 24,394 square foot lot. And has a gross floor area of 32,472 square feet. And that, given that the way you arrive at that floor area ratio is you take your gross floor area and you're dividing it by your lot area, and you've arrived at 1.3.
You're doing 36 Central?
Right. So the way, then they have 18 units in that development at 32 units an acre. And the building itself, the lot coverage is 43%. So when we were talking about some of the characteristics of the different proposals that for Adams Court, these are some of the things we're talking about. You know, what's the density, what's the lot coverage, what's the open space? So at 36 Central is 23% of the land area, or the lot area, is open space. It's 4 stories, and the front yard, or the front is stepped back 10 feet. So one of the things that we did with 131 Elliott was look at how far the building is set back from Central Ave when we talked about height. Because the closer a taller building is to the sidewalk, the higher its appearance is. So one of the tools we look at is the building set back from the front of the property line, or is the building, and the combination of that is the building stepping back at some height. So those are zoning tools that we can use to address scale at the street level, can address shadow, shade, daylight. So people have a sense of what it's like on Central with a 4-story building set 10 feet back from the sidewalk. So if we talk about that in East Milton, you know, you can get that picture in your mind. So do you think this is kind of a useful kind of analysis to go through in terms of how it compares, how it might help us, inform us about Adams Court? I would like to see some more diagram out of it in terms of just numbers myself, but maybe we can get to that. So,
Yeah, I mean, some things do kind of jump out at me. The 2 Falcone properties seem to have the highest density and the highest lot coverage and the lowest open space. And I wouldn't have guessed that until I saw this chart, because I think the reason 88 Wharf, you know, they have 30% lot coverage, they go up 6 stories. So that's how they can do that.
Right.
I think what I understand of 88 Wharf is that the property that's subject to it includes the area of the landing. That
They have
is
some
not
nice
part of
open
the,
space.
other area that they own
Right.
that is available. And So this may encapsulate all of that. I think on 36 Central, I permitted that. I'm not sure how much open space that there was, but building coverage, what isn't covered by building is mostly covered by parking lot.
Parking, that's right,
Oh, that's why.
right.
There's a little bit of open space. There was a preservation of a tree in the rear right of the building that was required. The building really comes right up, the first floor of the building is set back from the back of sidewalk, so that there's a step into that retail office area. But the second floor, I think, is right up over the back of sidewalk.
That might be the case with 88 Wharf too, because they do have some parking in
Right.
front.
So one of the things that we would look at is you think about what a density is. So if 1.3 FAR density at 36 Central, and then since I've got this one I printed of the 3 different schemes, I'm going to read them off for Adams Court. The 2017, so really the original scheme with 71 units, I believe, was an FAR of 1.7. The April, 51 units, I think, was a 1.4, and the July is a 1.6. And so there's range in there for scale. I think some of it has to do with when you're taking down a commercial building and building a new commercial building, you're not just going to trade it because that's an expense to create the same amount of square footage. I think that's what you've said to us before, Mr. Falcone, right? So that's why, it bumped up in the July one, right?
True.
So,
We net out roughly the same amount of commercial space. It's all in one building as opposed to 2, as previously.
okay, right, previously, right. So if we added in your original proposal, the fact that you didn't take down your existing building, it would adjust these numbers. So maybe that's something we should consider, Bill. Because if we're really trying to compare apples to apples, you do have an existing commercial that remains in that one.
Right, and the traffic study that we had done last November or December didn't incorporate the traffic for the existing building. It was all focused on the new
On the
building.
new.
We had neglected to build that
Okay.
in relative to the old building. So it really, that would need to be updated relative to the total volume.
Okay.
The parking calculations did take into account both buildings, but the traffic didn't.
Okay. So,
Hey Cheryl, I wonder if adding on to this chart some reference to what public amenities or what public benefit came in as well.
okay. I did ask for, the setback got added in. But amenities as a good one, okay? And I think we want to add parking spaces to this as well. Or a parking ratio or something like that. I do think some of these have a shared parking, so it would be interesting to look at that too. Because I know this board, when I was on it, looked at the shared parking for 131 Elliott. And I think a prior board before me looked at it, the same thing for 36 Central. So maybe we can have that kind of a summary too, because we are talking about some shared parking in your proposal, right? Yes, Rich?
I was just going to ask, is there, and the answer might be there's none, but is there a way we will know, or we could find out how much affordable housing is each of these properties?
Yeah, I think we can add that.
88 Wharf has 0. There are 3 in 36 Central. That's 10%. I think it's 2. It's 10%. So there are 2 one-bedroom units. There's 10% going into 131 Elliott.
So is that 4 units out of that, do you recall? Or are we getting?
I'm not sure about that.
Maybe we can add it as a column and just put it.
I think, yeah, let's add it as a column.
And 2 Adams wasn't going to have any, they were making a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust, and there was a $50,000 contribution that was going to be made. And 50 Elliott, that, the total number of units at Milton Hill House is 66. There's 36 in the existing, in the original building, which did not have affordables. There were 27 in the new building, 2 in the old Henry House that was restored, and 1 in a new carriage house. And there was an agreement that there would be 3 affordables. 10% of the new units there would be 3 affordables. So no new
No new for
affordables
the
associated
existing.
with the old, but 3 relative to the new, and that was done part of the variance process.
Right, right, because that is a variance, that's a little different process than we're looking at on the others. On 2 Adams, that was part of the overlay district,
Same zoning.
As 88
overlay
Wharf,
as
right?
88 Wharf, that's right.
and
That was
that,
2 phases,
and that allowed for 6 stories in height, right?
65 feet and 6 stories. That's right.
All right.
It was, ultimately, it was 5 stories over parking. There were 2 levels of parking, a level of a restaurant
Those are
and
both
retail.
below street, right?
Yeah, you go down the street, down into the site, and down again. There were 2 levels below the grade of Adams Street, at the top of Adams Street, a level of restaurant and retail, and 14 units above, 4 stories above that,
So 5 stories from Adams Street.
5 stories from Adams Street.
So if
So
we
one
say,
of the parking levels counted as a story.
okay,
And then there were 7 units in the 2 mill buildings that were built out.
and,
And then the storage itself was another piece of the,
Third partner.
yeah.
so Ned, your feeling is that if we're looking at 88 Wharf and 2 Adams coming in under that same zoning, that 88 Wharf, because of the park or the parking or something, that's driving that FAR number lower, because they are 6 stories?
I think so. If it's strictly FAR based on the total lot area, I think you have to factor in all of the area of the landing, because they had to factor it in for parking calculation purposes. And then there's an easement granted to the town for parking and public access as well.
There's 10 bonus units down there.
There was those 2 zoning overlays had these bonus calculations. You could get additional units if you had so much extra parking, if you had so much extra open space, if you had so much extra this. You know, there was this crazy calculation. The 88, in the 2 Adams Street, we were taking advantage of bonuses. There was parking, there was, and, they deeded an acre into open space to DCR. There's a lot of other components that went with it, all of which,
So what-
got to a
There's a
calculation.
conservation restriction on the back land behind 2 Adams that takes that big knoll, goes all the way around to the back just before the bridge. There's a CR on it from extra space storage to DCR to handle the open space requirement,
Okay,
to give them more of a bonus
Okay.
up front.
okay.
And they did some other things. They opened up access to the,
Chapter 91, they redid the bridge going over the river.
So these are probably the least similar in terms of characteristics to East Milton, but I do think it's interesting still to look at some of these data points. But 131 Elliott is probably more similar. It does have changes in height, right? So at the corner, there's less height than there is on Central Ave. So as you get to Elliott and Central Ave, there's a drop in height, 1 floor at that section, right? And there is a topographic change of 1 level so that you can come into parking on 2 levels. So there are some similarities in that aspect of it. And here, the FAR, so again, just under an acre, 37,304 square feet. Gross floor area, 59,043 with an FAR of 1.6 and 38 units. I would say if you're looking at, let's say, the smallest of the proposals of the three for the Adams Court, the April one, that's 71,500 with an FAR of 1.4, and you have 50 units in that. If you compare that to 131 Elliott of 59,000, 38 units and 1.6. I think the units are a little larger at 131 Elliott, but it is a density of 44.4 units per acre, and your April proposal is a density of 42.6 per acre. So just as a data point, again, maybe this is more similar to what you're proposing.
I mean, I'm seeing a unit density of 60.
Yeah, because, I'm sorry, because you don't have the April date
Oh,
line in
okay.
there that,
Oh, okay.
that got added after Mark sent it to us to review. I said, Mark, you're missing the April one, and so I'm
Okay.
sorry, it didn't make it out. And so it will get,
April of 2018?
yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And that'll,
You have 3 blue rows at the top?
yes, you have that?
2.
That's
Tab
all.
two.
It came in late this afternoon.
And we were dealing with
It's not-
333.
Right, so, sorry, we'll get it distributed. I don't,
Okay, that's okay.
yeah,
Thank you for sharing.
It's also,
yeah.
Copy, smaller.
Adams Court doubles the commercial.
The commercial
There's only 4,000 square feet of commercial in 131.
and 131, right, so in terms of the
Oh, yeah.
unit count, right,
That was
okay.
6.
So, the setback on 131 Elliott is, it varies. It's more on Elliott than it is on Central. And one of the things that was a lot of discussion was that how high it would go before it stepped back, but depending upon how far it was from the property line. I think that's definitely something for our discussion too, because that's something that's changed in your proposals.
Right, there, this says it's 2.7, but it's
It's,
all
no,
over the board.
yeah, and this is where we haven't had a chance to fully review these data points, but I do think those corrections, Bill, you'll need to review this and get to Mark at MAPC. Any comments to him about that? So let's go then to the other page, or the other document, this one that was on the cover, Bill. So Brian, the potential parcel build-out analysis comparison is what we're moving to.
What was that, Cheryl?
So the other MAPC document,
Yeah.
it's entitled the potential parcel build-out analysis comparison.
Okay.
And it has a photo at the top and then 2 massing diagrams.
Yeah, I got it.
A digital version of this one?
It's the same, it should be the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted the public
Yeah,
to be
this
able
one
to
didn't
see.
get, I did request that we get the other scheme, which we don't have yet, and we'll have to work on getting that. But this analysis demonstrates on the left the potential under the current zoning for commercial. It's restricted by parking. They've made the assumption that the way to do the parking is on the surface. There are other ways to do the parking. If you continue to do structured parking, you get more parking spaces, you build more floor area. So that's, you're allowed 3 stories of commercial. You're not required any setbacks or lot coverage or open space or anything like that in the commercial.
It assumes that you would get a variance to put parking in the 2 residential lots.
Right, I did mention that to him too, that it's about right in this section in here where the 2 residential lots. Yes? Did you have a question, Rich?
Oh,
Oh,
no,
sorry,
just put my
sorry.
hand down, sorry.
Okay, yeah, somewhere like in here, are those two residential lots, which you wouldn't be able to park on those. Yes.
I did have a question. So this, the one on the left would be if you could park it, then you could go,
You can park it with what they show.
they'd show.
Yeah, so
Okay.
except that
They're getting us going right against.
this is zone residential.
So they'd need
You'd have
that
to get a-
waiver.
You'd
Yeah.
have to get a variance for those parking spaces to go in the residential zoning.
But by right, they could do that with one waiver.
Right,
By right, they could go to 3 stories
right,
and do all that parking.
right.
Why wouldn't it go all the way to the alley, residential?
The residential doesn't include this. This is part of the commercial, right?
Oh,
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
That's
Isn't
it.
it, wasn't it, isn't it
There
residential
were
now?
3 lots there.
Well, there's a two-family there, but it's own, it's own.
Oh, all right.
Zone commercial.
Okay, I get it.
It's already zoned commercial.
They must be, that must assume that you wouldn't take the building all the way down. Because with available surface parking, you couldn't build a bigger building.
Right, the surface parking is what they use as the determining factor here. So I asked him, I said, well, that's true, but another scenario would be if they proposing structured parking here, if they propose structured parking here, they could build more commercial, and they said yes, right? So if you're able to go down a level, go up one level, build commercial over it, I mean, those are still possibilities in an as-of-right scenario. And then on the right is shown the July proposal. So that's the one that's bigger than the April proposal because it was going to have 25% affordable. And to get that affordable and rebuild the commercial, it needed to have more square footage, right? I mean, that's,
And that is, I'm not sure whether, the last thing we showed was 2 levels of commercial at
okay,
Adam
right,
Street.
you're right, you did.
And so there's I don't know what the unit count is in there, but it was,
This looks like it's the June version, right?
yep.
Okay,
I think we took away 6 units and converted those to office
right,
space on the
that's
second
right.
floor.
Okay, so we should get this updated as well.
Sean, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
So, and I know, I'm not picking on that picture, but it's not the entire property. And I remember at one point, so my question is, at one point we talked about trying to get like an actual aerial shot of that area. Have we ever,
You mean for
Spoke
us
about
to
that.
get like a drone shot of it, or just to
Yeah,
grab
something like
something off the?
that. Of that neighborhood area, just, I mean, I saw one not long ago,
Uh-huh.
but it was from the expressway, and you could
Okay.
kind of see that whole area. And I thought to myself, wow, it would be nice if that was shifted right a little bit.
We
And
we have access to GIS mapping, or
We have, I've seen the,
We have
it's
it.
in
We
there,
have it.
it's in one of their
Yeah,
packets.
we have it. We've showed it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't quite
Did
what I was
you-
thinking, but I know what you're talking about.
Did you take the PowerPoint presentation I sent you on here?
it's on there.
It's on here.
Their original one from 2017 is on there, and the July one's on there. I don't have anything from April. That's,
I have something that I whittled down
Yeah, so why
that's
don't-
here.
I don't need to see it now. I was just asking if we had it. Like,
Okay.
not to see right now and go through, but just if we have it.
Okay.
If we don't have it, let's get it. If we have it, great. I'd like
Okay.
to see it.
Jenny, you had a question?
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
April?
Nope.
Brian?
I am all set.
All right. So, what are folks' thoughts about this idea? I guess we'll come back to this idea that Ned brought at the beginning, which is kind of the merging of the April scheme and the July scheme. So, the April scheme had 10% affordable. The July scheme had 25% affordable. The April scheme therefore is smaller, and therefore needs less parking. Do you want to have any other comments about that, Ned?
Before you ask that,
Sure.
what was your initial question? What do we think? What do you mean by what do we think?
Are we open, or do we think they should explore that idea, come back to us with some thoughts about that?
I mean, I don't think I'm gonna have an answer to that, only because my understanding was we kind of were going through this whole process that you laid out before. If what you're saying is the developer wants to actually come back with an application or is actually deciding on something, that's a different story, right? Because right now we don't have anything. And so I guess the only way I could answer that question, if we started bringing in, some folks and say, well, what does the neighborhood think? And what do we think around the table? And let's go through that plan and have a big
Right.
discussion. But we've done that a few times, and so I guess my quick answer is I don't know.
I guess if we were looking at the options that have been put forth by the developer, do we want to continue to evaluate multiple options, or do we want to just, we will definitely be continuing to discuss the traffic and parking impact as the consultant does that work. We did ask them to give us data that said if you had the certain number of residential units and a certain square footage of commercial, what's your trip generation? But also, if you had this kind of scenario, the commercial scenario, what if you had retail there? What's your trip generation? What if you had medical office there? What's your trip generation? Because then we can start to look at, is there a greater traffic impact for one use over another? So does that help us think about how much commercial, like they've had a June plan that had less commercial and a July plan that had more commercial? Would the traffic and parking analysis help us think about what the right program mix might be? So that's, outside of this kind of data analysis, and that will be coming in October. Yes, Denny?
So I'm trying to refresh my memory. The April plan, was that one of the last plan? We met in the library one night.
You want to pop it up?
April?
Was that April? Was that the one it was?
Well, it was really a February plan that was going to
Yeah.
be shown in East Milton in April, and we didn't get the opportunity to show it, so.
You have it here?
That was we were kind of somewhere between 3 and 4 like it went 3 to 4 stories.
Yes.
yeah.
That's why we brought that back, Denny?
Yeah.
Is that discussion, yeah.
Because I appreciate your being willing to bring that back.
I can't say that we're willing to bring it back.
Right.
Because there are new programmatic things about this scheme
Yeah, so you guys were selling me on the alleyway, I like that.
that we think work better for the overall property, work better for the town, work better for the area. They work better for the property because we're now not building a big tray of parking underneath most of the building, where you have a facade of a parking wall at the Bassett Street level, and then building up from
So-
that.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the parking now is masked in a garage that's kind of hidden by the bulk of the building. And there's open space to Bassett Street. And we relocate existing tenants into a new building. It just becomes a better building. It's a better thing for those tenants. We get rid of that old building. We widen the alley between parking garage and the building that fronts on Adams Street. There's a bunch of there are physically reasons why this is a better plan. I think the separate question is, would we look at the ability to scale back the density of this new scheme if we reduce from a 25% affordable alternative to a 10%? So, when the building got smaller over the winter because we went from the 25% affordability factor to a 10% affordability factor. Now we're only subsidizing 5 units as opposed to 15 units. You need fewer market rate units to subsidize the balance. So that, I think we can take a look at that. I'm not sure that we're able to go back to a scheme that was 2 separate buildings that maintain one existing building and built a new building. That's possible, but we haven't, at this point,
I think one of the other major differences, in addition to that greater width at the Adams, the alley, is the U shape on Bassett Street, you know, with the open space in the middle. So
So that would be in this,
that's what I think, so when we're saying kind of a merger of the two, it's the bringing the scale down, but with the same diagram of a site diagram is the way I look at it, right? And so you would still do the garage. The other thing about that is you had been asked, I think, to look at extra parking in the garage, but if you didn't provide extra parking and you only right-sized it to your development, would that take a floor off of the garage?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's another factor, because I think people were concerned about the height of the garage,
that's a good,
right?
What
So-
was the theory behind adding on to the garage?
I think,
it?
Parking, right?
yeah, I think
Additional
That's
parking.
the under. with
concerned
the-
about East Milton Square being short of parking, that was the
4
thought.
stories,
That's-
That was, that would, you'd have to be under the impression that somebody, folks would start parking in a garage. So,
No,
and
you
walking away from there to
yeah,
go.
I mean, we've
wherever.
already, I think I've heard Bill say a number of times that folks don't like to, people like to park in front of the liquor store, they don't like to park, you
Down the
know,
street
down the
and
street and
everywhere.
walk to it. So I can't imagine somebody's gonna wanna park in the fifth story of
Yeah, I
a
mean,
garage and then walk down to the liquor
There's
store.
this whole parking analysis, I
Yeah.
think, there's a lot.
It'd be great to hear, yeah.
There's a lot of studies out there that say, why is there free parking? Like, why don't people have metered parking? Because why should any parking be free, especially if somebody dominates and doesn't move a car? I was at a meeting today, they said a car hadn't been moved off for 6
But
months.
those are
off-
businesses that do that, right? And so then
Well,
you heard,
yeah.
yeah.
In this case, you know, there's parking access to each of the floors. So if you're living on the fourth floor, you're gonna park on the fourth floor because you're gonna
Right.
have direct access. If you're on the third floor, you're gonna park on the third floor. Second floor is gonna go to the second floor. The ground floor level is really gonna be about the more transient parking uses coming into the retail space, maybe people coming in for appointments with professionals in the office space. You're gonna tend to, and you know, as a developer would assign parking spaces or select areas for parking that match where the people would be parking on the building. So the lower levels would be the levels that would be more available publicly than the higher levels.
Right, sure. And some of those, like, I know I've parked a place in garages where, like the health center or what have you, validates the parking, so there's no charge to the person coming in to park. So the entity that is the business there pays for that parking, basically, and to make it available to their client base. But I think the question of whether there should be extra because of the scale that it adds is definitely a good question. And if you right-sized it, you know, what does that do to the overall scale of the building, the amount of building? Because the parking is not included in FAR calculations.
One more question, sorry. I like, this was great, an add-on. I mean, a lot of the stuff on here is, you know, stuff we kind of knew, but
Right.
in one spot is fantastic, and this is new visual for me. Were they also going to look at what a 40B could look like? I know that is a little tricky, but
Well, I mean, I think I've had conversations with Bill, and we were looking at what density was approved as a 40B at 131 Elliott, and it was approved. They decided to go back to their other proposal, so they're not building that one. But it was the same density as their first proposal. So I think if you wanted to, we could get a diagram of their very first proposal and say that's probably a 40B
I don't
scale.
think
I mean,
that's accurate. I mean,
How many
Don't
units
think
were
so?
approved at
Is that
131?
the area you wanted?
what?
How many units were approved at 131?
57.
57.
No, I was thinking more of like actual, the way it looks now. That's with what it could look like.
so
What's on site?
Like, what's
I
the
can give you
date of
that.
that?
All right, thank you.
plan? 'Cause that's got is that 3 to 4? Is that 3 stories on Bassett?
are you
or on-
calculating it?
I really can't tell.
Three-
on
Because I was
that.
No, I
going
did
to
like
with you
this.
where I'm
That's
at.
the only thing that stuck
Three
out
on
to me.
Bassett, stepping,
What it does look like.
Stepping
Four.
up.
4.
and then right on Adams, it's stepping back.
Back, the
Yeah,
top
stepping
floor
back.
step back,
The top floor there steps back.
Okay.
the residential, a step back.
Step back there.
Yeah, each corner's
back
clipped.
here, setbacks down here.
It still has the 20-foot alleyways opened up. And the alleyway between the building on Adam Street and our building right now is probably almost doubled. Which also creates, sort of a better loading. Access to those.
Access for loading
Dumpsters,
dumpsters for the
And
building,
loading.
for the rear of those buildings.
right.
you know.
So Cheryl, if I might, so to answer your question, I don't know if I agree or not agree
Yeah,
with that comment about 40B, like, 'cause I remember the conversation we had with 40R. I thought that was really interesting data to see what was approved in the state. And that I felt was really good data. I just, I don't know, maybe it's a collection of data of looking at what's been approved in different
I
towns
mean-
like ours. I don't know that we should just be looking at our town, because like you just said a few minutes ago, there's not a lot of areas that look the same. And so it's a hard time looking at or evaluating 88 Wharf when, let's be honest, that looks nothing like the area of East Milton.
but it gives you an idea about different scale.
That spot,
Yeah.
like, the context of looking at a spot, regardless of where the surroundings are.
No, I think that's part of what we wanted to look at with MAPC and the 40R,
Yep.
In fact, when we get to our discussion about budget items, I can give you an update on the funds for the 40R study. But, if we said, because that's one of our examples, in our other example, we don't have any that are like approved that weren't challenged and in some capacity for 40Bs in Milton yet, besides that one. So that's why I was suggesting could be an example. So if we said, if it was 51 units on 0.9 acres, that's 63 units an acre. And, as one example, we could do that one, but we could
Yep.
look at others, no doubt. So if it's 1.17 times 63, it's 73.7 units.
Yep.
We could just see scale-wise what it looks like. It doesn't,
Absolutely, I
it
get
may
it.
or may not be what,
Yep.
See that chart with the little chart? Yeah, that little one. Yeah.
I guess I was just saying, this is, I'm not,
Yeah.
this is great information as we're going through the process.
okay. So you'd like to have some kind of diagram that would put more of 40B scale project on the same thing here?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
just think if we're gonna, and I don't mean this in a negative way to anybody,
Oh, yeah.
but I'll say it anyway, if we're going to put a document like this together, I wouldn't want to just say this is what could be the 40B,
This
this
is
is what the developer said at the onset.
No, agreed.
I just, you know what I mean? You gotta
Agree.
just put some more thought into it. Yeah.
That's fine. The thing about the 40R versus the 40B, the 40R is a kind of a zoning where the 40B is more of an application, a comprehensive permit. But the 40R, the density tends to be higher because you're shooting for that 20 to 25% affordability. And the way that you don't have somebody subsidizing that increased affordability. Like if you have a agency or a town, a municipality that's building affordable housing, that's one thing, but it's on a private development, that's another thing. So that's my understanding. The density or the scale gets bigger to achieve that. So there'll be a question about whether the 40R, because it's driving that scale to be bigger, is appropriate for this site or for East Milton. But that's what the study
Yeah.
would help us decide, right?
And I personally don't know that, if you look at the list of all the ones that have been done in the town, not many at all, besides a couple, have the density that you were just talking about, per acre.
40R, but 40B.
No, 40R, that's why I say
Yeah.
that seems like it's probably not
We
a
haven't done
viable
a
option at
40R.
this point.
Haven't done a 40B either.
A 40B scale is generally, I think, as people know, quite a bit, even more so than the 40R scale.
Sure.
And a lot of surrounding communities have some. Yes? Oh, no, okay. Did you want to show, did you trying to find?
I found two aerials, an aerial
Okay.
on a slideshow that I have, and they're pulling it up, put it on their stick.
I'm sorry.
Surprised that this isn't. You're not getting it?
Do I have notes on there?
It's a
Otherwise you can
PowerPoint.
keep it. Take a picture of it with your phone.
I took my notes, so I'm okay. I don't need it now. I should have taken a picture though. That's
Like my
funny.
kids, you take a picture.
Thanks. See, I would have thought of that if I was 18.
All right, did you have the aerial?
No, hold on.
All right, then we'll move on shortly. Nice blue screen, Bill. While you're doing that, we had one set of minutes. Yes?
There should be
More than one set?
and the 14th of September.
August 23rd. So what, whereas in our packets was the 23rd? Right, and then you sent a link to the other, okay. Have folks reviewed the minutes?
I have.
Okay. So, yes, if you'd like,
Well, is everybody?
I am.
yeah,
Yeah.
Do? Okay.
okay.
Do you know the dates? Do you want to hand them to me?
Oh, I only have one set here, but it's August 23rd and September 13th.
So moved to approve August 23rd and September 13th.
Yeah.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Brian, you in favor of the minutes?
Is there one more?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, we did that.
August 23rd and September 13th. Meeting. Aye, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Um,
Julie is not used to us being organized. Happens once a blue moon.
I'll just mention on this Traffic Mitigation Committee, we're waiting for some additional information from the Board of Selectmen, so we'll talk about that next time. But it is a new committee, and they're looking for someone from our board to be on that committee. And I do think it's a way, what they're thinking is different than the Traffic Commission, in that this would be sort of more visionary, sort of planning ahead and thinking ahead. And who knows, maybe it would be the folks who would help decide how those mitigation funds of the revolving fund that we're proposing, how they would be spent. So that we'll end up deferring further discussion of that. So on our agenda here. How we doing, Bill?
I'm not.
We're not?
Not recognizing the stick.
Okay.
Can you just put it in
So-
our Dropbox or something?
I'll get it for you.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, so I guess what we'll do is we'll go back and see what we can get some further analysis from MAPC to kind of at least take this piece of it and reflect the things that we discussed. If you are inclined at least to think about if there's a fourth line that might go into these blue lines for Adams Court, we could consider that. But how much we consider it at the same time as we're starting to get this traffic and parking analysis, because I think the program mix that coming out of that could be helpful. Bill, there
I think
was.
If the traffic looks at what's currently proposed on a 40R plan, and we're able to come in with something that's more of a 10%, it's gonna be a less impactful traffic. You're studying a bigger thing, so.
Plus units.
Well, right, I mean, they'll have a trip generation for residential that we can
You can scale.
scale, right. Okay, so are we good on this discussion then?
Yes, I did want to review our timetable to manage expectations. Are we on target?
Well, because of our meeting slipping a little, we were on target with the traffic folks initially for the 11th. There was a piece of it they weren't going to have ready for the 11th, but I think that now that they're going to have more time, they'll be able to do it should be able to complete it. So if we say that, that would be November 1st, so that, Bill, you'll confirm with Beta on November 1st. And we'll also have an update on this MAPC.
And would you have that for the October 25th?
Well, we can see about that.
Or you think you'd really focus everything on
It
this for the first?
So we
Yeah,
had,
that's fine.
We're going to have a couple of public hearings we need to schedule. But I think with those 3 meetings, you tell me to hand me something. How about, well, I mean, we could do the MAPC portion. I think it's a smallish portion, maybe on the 25th, and move the traffic to the 1st. You think we can do that on the 1st? Or you think we need to, or we could do it all on the 8th? We have less on the 8th. If you have some thoughts about it in, between now and then,
We'll
you can
reach
let
out.
us know. And as our agendas kind of roll out, we can let you know. But it looks like now the 8th would be the bigger block of time,
Okay.
right? Lauren, is that what,
Yes.
that's the way you see it too? Okay. So let's just, let's put that in for now, okay? Okay?
Yeah,
All right,
fine.
great.
Excellent,
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
November 8th.
November 8th.
And we'll get back to you sooner on that, just to keep you updated.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I skipped over earlier, citizen speak.
Totally forgot.
So is there anybody left here who wants to address the board on something else on our agenda? Okay. And I'm sorry about that. The Milton Village build-out, I mentioned a little bit earlier, so I just want to encourage you. We got a lot of positive feedback about the analysis that was done. And Josh's presentation you have a copy of the analysis, but the presentation that he gave with that, I think is useful. Background and explanation that goes with it. So if you have a chance to watch that, that would be great. I did have some thoughts. Zoning, I did hear from someone too, thinking that another architect who thinks that some people have a hard time understanding zoning, and thought that it might be useful if there could be a smaller kind of venue than the kind of big, council on aging venue. So I was thinking that either the Master Plan Implementation Committee or the Planning Board could host some smaller meetings, maybe, a series, so that we could try and keep it so it doesn't get too big, too many people, so that there can actually be, sit around a table and have a more dialogue about it to kind of go through the zoning. Or a working group, kind of what was been talked about for East Milton. So in a way, it's kind of like thinking through process that would work on these overlay districts, not just one or the other. So if you want to give that a little thought, we're waiting, again, there for the traffic analysis. and in part, it relates to the funding that we talked about last time. So we'll move on to the funding next, unless you have any questions about that.
Nope.
Okay. Now, we have a new chart, a revised chart.
Trying to get my bearings. Yeah, this is good, but
So
imagine if
the
you were
Board of
hired,
Selectmen
maybe you'd see the whole-
and Master Plan Implementation Committee had
Oh,
a
you
joint
could do that.
meeting. Our last meeting was a Thursday, it was the Monday following that, so that we could get the MAPC work and the traffic work going, right? So the funding could be approved. And then there were the other pieces of funding, and I explained the shortfall and the priorities, and if that,
excellent.
the sense that the Board of Selectmen could find a source of funds, that it would be great if we could get all of the requests covered. So that's what they voted. So, Lauren, you prepared this, so I'm going to go through this. So the Board of Selectmen approved if we just go down on the yellow here, right? Column, they approved the additional work by Childs Engineering that we talked about really being a little bit misnomered at calling it dredge permitting and ramp design and permitting. If you want further discussion about what those are, we can do that. But they approved that funding to come from master plan funds.
Okay.
The Chapter 40R, they approved, there's a $4,410, which is just what's left after the other items down below, to come from the master plan funds, and then the balance to come from Board of Selectmen funds. And then also the Urban Land Institute, the technical assistance panel, $7,000 for that. The Board of Selectmen would fund that. And then they approved from the master plan the additional funds to go to the traffic difference between what was approved last fiscal year and what we have left to finish it for Milton Village.
Okay.
Right? Did I get that right?
I'm sorry, I've been dealing with technical difficulties trying to get
That's what it says here.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Basically,
the
they
bottom
cover it.
line is everything's covered if we agree with those allocation of funds from the master plan pot of funds.
So I would like to make a motion to approve $28,000 for Childs Engineering, $4,410 for MAPC 40R, and $17,590 for additional scope of work from Milton Village analysis to be funded with the master plan implementation money.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, very good, great. And then, I think last on our agenda is the planning board budget, Bill?
Yes.
Oh, for 2020.
We're gonna make it. We're
Hard to
gonna make it. 410.
There is, we have four items in there. Out of the four items, one is personnel wages and salary, that's Julia's wages. That's something that is set by union contract. Under the general expenses, we have advertising, postage, office supplies, training and education, dues and membership. Of the $4,407, they're odd numbers because last year we got a 3% across the board per line increase. That's why the numbers look so uneven. The other part to that is postage. Because of the requirement for certified mailings, that number went up. And with that, we get the money back from a developer when we send that out.
Right.
Problem is, we don't get the money, the planning board doesn't get the money back. When the developer comes in with the check to reimburse the town for that money, it goes into the general fund. So in order to repopulate that number, I have to go to the warrant committee for a reserve fund transfer to get the money back. Under advertising, we have a minimum of 2 town meetings, and each time we do zoning, we have to pay for 2 weeks' worth of advertising in the paper. That number is always expended very quickly. Office supplies, $858, that's toner cartridges, that's envelopes, that's ink, that's pens, folders. Education and training, that is citizen training, planning collaborative classes that the board may want to take. That's an APA course that somebody wants to take. It's an APA book that somebody may want to buy. Dues and membership is Mass APA and APA membership for the board and staff.
So, Bill, on the planning board studies and the master plan implementation, we saw how quickly those funds can go in this last round. Do you think that there's an opportunity to seek an increase in those?
Is that an opportunity or an appetite?
An appetite, I guess.
Yeah. I think when the warrant committee sees product such as the potential zoning that was written for Milton Village, when they see the studies that get done under 40R, the development analysis, I think
Traffic analysis.
maybe at that point, yes. But I think at least 3 of us know what it's like, 4 of us, know what it's like to sit in front of the warrant committee and have to sell the product and hope for a return.
What were you looking at for a reason?
I'm not sure, I just thought I'd.
Whether it's the
I
planning board
just-
studies or the
Oh,
master
okay.
plan
Yeah.
implementation,
And I-
increasing those.
Right, and there was discussion at the master plan the joint meeting that I mentioned earlier about potential to do a larger traffic analysis where they actually build the traffic model, and then they can manipulate, so in that model, they make a street one way, or they do something else, and then it shows you what the implication of that would be. Or it shows you if you have a new development and you're adding whatever trips, and then you plug that into that model. So there was interest in that. That kind of analysis could be $150,000, or that kind of traffic modeling can get us like that base model, and some other analyses could be as much as $125,000 to $150,000. And whether this would be a good place for that or not, or that there's some other request, of funds from, Board of Selectmen or otherwise. But I think it would be a really useful tool, and if there was a way for the town to find some funds for that. In the past, when the master plan was done, I think there was an initial $25,000 and then another $100,000, Bill. I think it went in as a separate line item in the budget request, and when it went to town meeting then, or in the warrant committee and then town meeting, it got approved as a specific request.
For the visioning and then the master.
Right.
Right.
Yep, and then, so when do we have to approve the budget for you? You have to submit it when?
November 1st.
November 1st?
So I would just like to see, so the dues and membership doesn't include ULI membership?
It could, if you wanted to.
I mean, I just think there's a lot of very valuable information through ULI that you guys could have access to, that I have access to as a member. And I just looked up the membership fees, it's only $220 a person.
I know that we were putting in for Lauren to do that.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think even one, that's true.
Right.
Only one person would be fine. Then you have access to all of their tools
Right.
online
Right.
and everything. Perfect.
What was that date? What's the one that you Are you going to or you went?
Oh, that's to the fall meeting, right? Is that what you're talking about,
I went
Lauren?
to a different event.
Oh, if you join by, you can go to the fall meeting, the one that Brian and I are going to be at on the 11th.
I agree, that would be a good
Yeah.
membership.
So it's 50% off if you work for a government, so it's only $220 for the year. It's pretty inexpensive.
So,
Well, an item I would love to see in a budget, maybe this year or next year, would be a computer program to put community outreach information on every project online.
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about?
yes.
And I don't know how, I mean, if it has to be November 1st, maybe it's not this time, but maybe we should try to work on that. I could try to work on that with April or something. But there's, you know.
I know what you're talking about,
we
yeah,
want
and
a
it
website.
would
Yeah,
be,
it was brought up before at another meeting, right? We
Yeah.
talked about this,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
so,
There's one platform that's very good. I'm sure there's many others. I'm just trying to look it
Yeah.
up from another town. I always forget what it's
We did
called.
that and we knew it blew the budget.
Oh,
more-
yeah, it was
More
crazy.
than big time.
So Boston does it. I wonder who they use.
I think they built their own.
They built their own. We don't have that.
Boston has an amazing
Yeah.
tool now for their three-dimensional data
Co-urbanize.
that you can down.
That's it,
That's it, yeah.
co-urbanized. Yeah, they
It
were
was-
crazy
I
money.
forget the exact amount, but it was about $5,000 or $6,000 for the year.
And it's like a subscription, like you have to pay every year, 5,000 or 6,000.
Well, you know, I think it is something to think about.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, when the
doesn't sound like that
budgets go to the warrant committee, if they have the reserve, I'm forgetting my term. You should know what the term is too, Rich. Well, when the fund, it's like one-time money, where it's free cash.
Cash, yeah.
If there's,
Everyone
I know,
knows
it sounds
free
great,
cash.
right?
That's like you won the game.
But free cash,
It's not free.
free cash, they don't like to use an operating budget, so if that's a subscription, they may not like to do that. But a one-time thing, like building a base to start with, it might be something that
Building
if there's
the-
enough one-time money available,
Building the transportation model
yes,
could be,
Yeah, and
would be a
build,
good use for that.
right.
and the reason why we would spend this money to get this, they should, I mean, that's something that folks should get behind.
Yeah, this
Transportation, or?
No, just the fact of what you're gonna use the
co-urbanized or
software
some other
to, yeah.
type of thing. This,
Getting
this
information.
co-urbanized tool is really amazing.
We have a tech guy, right, the town?
Couple of them, yeah.
Maybe we
Yes.
should show them the co-urbanize and ask them if they would have some advice on how they would like to do it, because it would be awesome if they would,
Oh, yeah.
you know, because, I mean, we'd almost have to hire another person to keep that uploaded. But actually, it would be as good as Dropbox.
Well, that's the thing. It's all of the documents that we get circulated anyways.
Yeah, so instead of uploading to Dropbox, you'd upload to this.
And the reason why I like it, and you don't have to use this part of the platform, but people can comment online
Yes.
Great.
on different projects. I mean, the Falcone one is a perfect example.
Yep.
You could have almost an online engagement piece to it on all these different options, the April model, this model, that model.
Yeah.
So as things are changing, everybody in the public has access to those documents in real time and can weigh in and offer comments.
People want more transparency in the town, $5,000 is a pretty good investment.
Right. So do you want to add that as a request on the planning board budget?
I would love to.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right.
To me,
I would say
$5,000
$6,000.
doesn't sound like that much money for.
It's probably 5,000 and change, so maybe say 6,000. You know what I mean? Like if you get quoted 5,300.
I mean, the small dollar amounts are the ones that get scrutinized the most, but,
So we'll look up the price.
Oh, we learned that at town meeting.
right.
So do you want me to call Co-Urbanize?
No.
Or
Lauren did
Lauren
already.
Okay, and what was the number they gave?
I don't know off the top of my head the exact number.
But it was a roughly around that. So we'll get that number, if you don't mind calling them back.
And
I'll put
then,
that- Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, so maybe we can put this back on the agenda for the 25th of October. And Bill, maybe you could speak to Mr. Dennehy or whomever you think appropriate about an appetite for bumping up either or both of the planning board studies and the master plan implementation And we can talk about at the master plan committee meeting, Lauren, about that amount when we meet on the 15th, right?
The 16th.
16th, sorry. Okay. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I need one, I
All
need
right,
one.
good, you
You-
got
you
it.
did it?
Motion
got it.
adjourned.
Second? Okay, all in favor?
Have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks,
Take the
Brian.
microphone off.